it's worth taking a minute with the archetypical human individual that this whole tradition emanates from, which is the Buddha, which just means the awakened one. That's not really a name. His name was um, Siddhartha Gautama, and he was from the Sakya clan in India, and he was somebody who had a pretty good gig, good karma, good family, plenty of money, and so they just were thinking, well, he'll just come into the family thing, and be a kind of lord and a governor. And so he went through what you call the materialistic part of the journey that we're all on. Like, do we have enough money? Did we get the right education? Do we have the right stuff? Do we have the right clothes? Right companion? Do we find our soulmate? Are our kids going to the best schools? Blah, 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 blah. The journey of our life at a relative materialistic level. And he went through that like we are going through it. And this is what's so interesting to contemplate today, had a moment, you could say, or a series of moments in which he recognized some fundamental experiences, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. And the most powerful, penetrating one was the experience of impermanence, which is, if you wanted to fly a flag um, with a word on it that it summed up the understanding that draws you towards this kind of practice, it would be understanding impermanence, which is that everything we cling to, everything we grasp at, is a relative phenomenon and is subject to impermanence, including, oh no, Mr. Bill, our fabulous, precious, beautiful body, um, all our emotions, all our thoughts, our cities, our towns, our planet. We're going to contemplate this tomorrow, and you just go like, oh my goodness. As Paul Simon said, everything is slip sliding away. So when the Buddha saw this, he probably had some depression, I would think. It's anxiety provoking to think about that. Think about our own impermanence, of those we love, situations. It's kind of one of the most provocative uh, experiences that we have, is to taste the impermanence. So in his case, what it did is it kicked off, or released him from the idea that his relative existence was going to fully solve his problem. Become a great doctor, have a great retirement plan, have a extra house, he had one child with a lovely wife, from everything we can tell. And even so, when he saw that this indelibly inked onto his existence, he said, I think I have to, as we would say in football, drop back and punt here. Uh, so one thing about Buddha is he didn't wait till fourth down to punt. He punted probably on in second and third down, um, and left the house. You know, slipped out the back in the middle of the night. So my son Ethan, who is teaches some of these courses here with us, um, says in today's terms, Buddha would be a deadbeat dad. Who kind of walked out on his family, and it's true to a certain extent as a beginning point. But then the part of the story that really kills me is he went out into the jungle, and like it is today in India, the jungle is inhabited by all kinds of practitioners, yoga and siddhas, and uh, spiritual kind of explorers. And I guess the modern version of it would be going to New York and going to a yoga studio, and taking on all kinds of alternative lifestyles, which frankly is what we did. That's why it's so funny. In my generation, we actually did that. You would become, a renunciate by growing your hair long and dropping out of and taking a lot of drugs and stuff like that. That was our version of it. And then he studied with some really accomplished yogis. That seems to be historically accurate. And they were teaching him a lot of the same stuff that you would learn if you went to like out here Yoga Shanti, or what, one of wherever you are. I'm sure there's yoga studios, and they're learning beginning to advanced practices about modulating the breath, uh, modulating your awareness of the physical possibilities, uh, tuning into meditative qualities. And then these days, you do that, and then you go back home and make dinner, for your teenage kids. My point being that it's not that different. Fundamentally, we're not talking about some freaky past that has nothing to do with the present situation. It's just human beings who recognize certain qualities of existence, and then uh, become curious, and investigate, start some kind of spiritual journey that really isn't about how much money you can make or any of those kind of things. It's more about, as Susan said, her well-being and about sense of balance and integration. And in that world, there are considered to be several different, major philosophical leanings. And one of them is called eternalism, that you find something eternal. The notion of eternalism is that there's something, in this field of impermanence that lasts, that carries forward, that we can hold on to, that we can cherish, that we can use to create some kind of permanent identity for ourselves in the absence of being able to, be Susan Layden forever. You can be, whatever soul or whatever, um, some principle, some part of us is eternal. So that's one thing that we track as a possible outcome that has many, many philosophical ramifications, which we'll talk about tomorrow in our contemplation course. And the other one is we become nihilistic. These are the two extremes, like we were talking about earlier, avoiding extremes. And nihilism is just like a negation of everything. There's nothing permanent, so there's nothing, doesn't matter. You don't have to vote. What's the point? This is just the nine millionth election of the current era. The tides are going to turn. People are going to come and do what they're going to do, and why should I care? That's called nihilism. So somewhere between nihilism and eternalism, Buddha is sort of studying those different schools of philosophic thought. One of the cool nihilistic schools is hedonism, right? If there's no consequence to any of our actions, we might as well have as much pleasure as possible. Not bad, worth a try. Again, he was one of the people who tried them all. So, and we can try different approaches. At the end of the day, none of it fit. It was like Cinderella. None of the slippers fit his feet. And so he went off into the forest, kind of like with a WTF kind of state of mind. Nothing really fit. And then he sat down, supposedly, this is all a metaphor too, it works really well as a metaphor, under the Bodhi tree, which is a papal tree, and then invented a kind of meditation, which was what we're doing now, mindfulness, which was, we don't really have a lot of instructions other than pay attention, observe, see what happens, see what arises, be coherent with whatever arises, and mix awareness with whatever arises. So that's another instruction. Whatever arises, mix it with meditation or awareness. And in that, he kind of had a sense that this is Custer's last stand here, because he'd been through a lot of the other traditions. And in that, just simply being present, simply being aware, simply noticing, there was a opening, an awakening of a natural kind of intelligence, Bodhi mind, that was already present, buried like a treasure underneath all this other stuff, underneath the materialism, underneath the spiritual materialism. There's this Bodhi mind, and we have it. This is something the great teachers will. You can go to certain teachers; they'll just simply point that out to you. Whether you can tune into that or not, you say, but yeah, but As long as we have yeah buts, we have path. The path is addressing the yeah buts. Yeah, but I'm too anxious. I'm too depressed. I'm too solid. I'm too intent on finding Valhalla or someplace, to actually just drop it all and pay attention to the present experience. There's an unhooking of ourselves from being captive to our own projections and our own wishes and desires in the spiritual realm. So then he had this kind of you know uh, different traditions will call this different things, but um, awakening, let's just call it awakening. And it was so profound, and it was so profoundly ordinary that he literally didn't think anybody would understand what he was talking about. Which, if you're a Buddhist, you have that concern anyhow already, a lot of the time. And he walked around and didn't say anything for about 49 days, 7 weeks, accordingly to the legend, in the jungle. And then he bumped into some of his old crew, the yogis. Think of these as very advanced practitioners, and they looked at him, and it was sort of typical at that time, just as it might be at in Maui or Kripalu these days, to like have different practitioners come together and compare notes. But they looked at him, they thought he had some kind of unusually together vibe. And so, as was the tradition, they said, "So, okay, what? What is it, Buddha? What's the deal? What are you doing? What did you do? What's your dharma?" And then he gave his first commentary, uh, which then it's an interesting quality because the words that came out of his mouth were so cohesive that they became doctrine. I can't imagine he thinks I'm going to make up a doctrine here right on the spot. He just was actually expressing the essence of his experience. And that first talk was something called the Four Noble Truths.